Did you ever feel like you were just a foot shorter than what you needed to reach for? I have that problem too. And today we're going to solve that. We're going to build a step stool. We've made a little template of what the side of our step stool is going to look like. And we're going to turn this rustic, soft maple lumber that I have in front of me here into the cutest little step stool you ever saw. Let's get started. We made a little template of what we want the side of our step stool to look like. We're 15 inches deep, we're 12 inches high, and we're going to make our step stool 18 inches wide. The reason we're doing these dimensions is to make a good, solid, stable step stool. When you step up on it, the last thing you want to do is fall off of it. So let's make a nice step stool that is stable. We're going to lay our dimension on our piece of wood here, trace around, and cut this all out and get our sides first. This will be our side piece here. This will be our steps here. And we have some support pieces that we're going to put in. And we're going to use our Kreg pocket hole jig so that we don't have any nails and screws from the outside. It's all going to be done from underneath and be a nice, clean assembly. But first thing let's do, let's get started putting our cutout on our side. First thing let's do is let's divide our board in half and use our half measurement as the starting place for the feet of our step stool. Now basically what we're going to do is we're going to put our template like this, trace around, flip it over, put our template here, trace around. And that's going to create our two sides. First thing we need to do though, take it over and cut it to size and get started. As you watched, we cut our sides to dimension, went to the bandsaw after we had traced our pattern on and cut our angles, and then we sanded them on an edge sander. Now, if you don't have a bandsaw and an edge sander and you want to do this project, you can cut this with a jigsaw, a little more hand sanding. If you have a spindle sander, that works even good, really well. And then I always take a sanding block after I get done and just take my sanding block and run back and forth on the edges, and that just really smooths out those big curves. Just like that. I do that all the time. That just makes a nice smooth curve with a sanding block. You get that done. A little harder to do on the inside here, but it can be done also. And just clean up that curve. Makes a nice smooth curve. Now we're going to go ahead and sand this. We're going to put a route on our curve here, on our curve here on the front and back. I think we'll do it along the ground so that we have a nice smooth edge on our floor, but we're not going to do it under our step. So let's go ahead and sand this out, put a route on it. While I was sanding and routing, I had noticed I was going to leave my open knots, but I noticed that I was catching my finger on some of the rough edges, and I don't want to have any of that when I have the finished product. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a little wood filler that is a darker color, and we're going to fill in our knot so that we don't have a jagged edge. We're not going to stain this piece. It's going to be a clear finish. So this color of wood filler that we're using right now will just blend in and look like it's part of the natural color. You can see that it is dark and matches real well. We're going to do that on these two pieces. We're going to allow that to dry and resand our edge and then get ready to work on the steps. We've completed the sanding of our sides after we filled our knots, and it's time to cut the shelves. Now, as you remember, we're going to make our step stool 18 inches wide. We have to cut the pieces that go in between our stretchers and our bottom step, and we'll take that measurement by putting the two sides together, measuring the thickness of those sides, which is 1.5 inches, and deducting that from 18 inches to make our shelf, our bottom step, and our stretcher pieces. So 16.5 inches, and we'll go to the table saw and cut those pieces. We have our pieces ready to cut. We're just going to use our saw sled to cut them square. We have our measurement set at 16.5 inches, so let's cut up our pieces. Okay, back to the bench. We've come back from our table saw. This is going to be our first step. This is the stretchers for the top shelf. This is the stretcher for the lower shelf. Now I want to show you something that I did. I put a rabbet on the back side of my stretchers. This is going to be the stretchers for the top shelf. And what I'm going to do is put a mounting block between my two stretchers, and then my top shelf will sit basically on top of it like that, and we'll screw from underneath to mount it. We're going to take our stretchers over to our Kreg boring machine, and we're going to put some holes in the edge of our stretchers to mount them to our sides. Same with this. We're going to put some little stretcher blocks in here, some little mounting blocks. We're going to put some Kreg pocket holes in there, and we're going to mount them. Now I've marked on the inside of my sides where my shelf is going to go and where my stretchers are going to go. This stretcher will go up top here. But let's just go ahead and go to our Kreg boring machine, put our stretchers together, and then put them together from side to side and mount our bottom shelf. We're ready to go on that. We're getting ready to put on our bottom stretcher. We've put our support pieces on there. We're going to line it up with the marks that we've already made. We're going to give it a couple of nails to hold it in place securely before we put our screws in, but we're going to actually secure it with some screws for permanence. Our side stretcher here, we're going to screw it to the outside with some 1 5/8" screws. And the front of the stretcher we're going to secure with our pocket screws. This is going to give a very strong step that you can step on without having to worry about how much weight you apply to it, because we've got 4 screws and 2 nails holding it. And we're going to do that on this other side also as we attach the other side. Now our top stretcher for our top shelf goes in the same way. Let's turn it around here so you can see. It's going to be held in place by just the 2 pocket holes on either side. The strength of this step comes from the fact that it sits on top of the sides. So let's go ahead and put our 2 pocket screws in here, and then we can attach the other side. You notice I'm not using any glue. The reason I'm not using any glue is because we're going perpendicular with our construction. And the glue, if the expansion and contraction of heat and humidity really wouldn't allow the glue to be a major holding power, but these screws will be. Okay, there's our stretchers from one side. And we're going to attach the other side just like it. There's our bottom shelf all sanded, ready to go in with our step stool all put together. If everything went correctly, this should slide right in. And fit just like that. All we have to do now is put a couple of screws from the bottom side of our hanging cleat, and our bottom step is in. Let's do that. Well, didn't turn out too bad. Now it's off to the paint shop. Well, we're all done in the paint shop. It came out beautiful. It's going to be a great little step stool. We're going to give it to our grandkids so they can get up to the sink. One of the things, however, if you're a little uneven when you get all done, you can sand off some of the bottom and straighten up. We ended up with a really good little flat stool. But this is an easy little project to build. Great weekend project. Do it in your garage. But it is wonderful. Great little gift, too. We'll see you next time on Woodworking with Wes.